Hey guys, Lucas Soccer here. Today we have a new episode of Goo or Glue, where we basically look at a deck in the format, decide if it's goo, if it's really good, or if it's the glue, and it's for glue eaters. I have Julien with me. He is right here. Yeah, he's right there. Today we're going to be looking at Canine Crystron. This is a deck that I've talked about a lot on the channel recently. I think this deck is absolutely insane, but I guess we'll find out how insane I really think it is. Any other shoutouts you want to do first, Julien?
Just big shout out to, Team Metro Gaming. That's both our team, so want to make sure to shout them out.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and hop into the video here. This is a list from Julien. You want to step in here?
Soham Temhane. I'm sorry if I mispronounced it, but hey, if I did, then I might be, the GOAT YouTuber getting into the ranks with Austin, the DB grinder. So that's all that matters.
I made him say it because I could not say that, but he's the GOAT. He definitely is the GOAT. He was able to top this weekend at the Denver regional, which was like a pretty big regional, had like 300 something participants, not a small regional. We're gonna go over his list here, and we're gonna use lists that have top regionals from now on instead of our own personal list, just so we can look at a deck that's a little bit more proven in the field. Starting off here, the main things that we want to look at with his deck is he is choosing to play Thistvern in it. This is an optional card for the deck. The real reason that people choose to play Thistvern in the deck is because it helps your canine cards become more accessible with just the Crystron. So like if you open two Crystron names, pretty much any two Crystron names you're able to bridge over without locking yourself. And the main reason is because of Thistvern. You can get to any two fives pretty easily. The main problem is that just making Ripper does not combo, but if you play Thistvern, then you're making Ripper, which adds Jokel, and then Thistvern adds a 5. So then you do combo because Jokel is able to extend further from there. So he is choosing to play that. It's an optional card there. He's also choosing to play 2 Tristaros, which is another optional thing you can do here. The cool thing with 2 Tristaros is it lets you access like different different synchros throughout the turn. It also lets you open this card, which is pretty good. Opening Tristaros into boards is definitely not a bad thing to have at all. I will say that one problem you do have when going second is your normal summon. I feel like you want your normal summon to be a canine card a lot of the time. That way you're able to continue playing with your canine engine. And if your normal summon Tristaros, you're just not able to do that. The only other interesting things that I see here about his main deck is involving the spells. He is choosing to play the Canine X Force release. This is an optional card in the deck as well. I think this card is very, very high ceiling. I think that as we see the format progress, we're going to see Canine Force release start to come out of deck lists because the turn 1 board is good enough as it is. We don't really need to be adding a mediocre card to the deck and taking an extra deck slot up just to play this card and have one other interaction. He's also playing 2 Case of Canines here, and he's playing 2 Chaotic Elements instead of just deciding to lean 1 into a 3 of and the other one is a 1 of. I think personally I would play 3 Chaotic Elements in 1 Case of Canine, just because Chaotic Elements does have a lot of additional effects that help it like play very well into boards, especially with like the different things you can do with the deck. Is there anything you see about the main deck, Julian, that you do differently?
So like I just want to first add off of what you were saying about this Vern. I think that that card's nice also for when you're going second. It helps you get extra lines of play when sometimes like you might have a Solfefnir in your hand or in your graveyard and you don't have a way to summon it because you don't have any Crystron cards in hand. So this one's nice for going through that. The other thing about the X Liberation, it's kind of like we see this every format where at first everyone always plays like all the engine requirement cards, and then as you go through, you learn how to play the deck. You realize that cards aren't as needed or as necessary. So I definitely do think we're gonna see that card come down. I don't really like that this guy was playing 42 cards. I think that there's one hand trap this format that actually does anything, and it's Fuelos. So for me, the most important part of deck building is to play like 40 cards and see those cards most often, as well as see the engine cards that you want to see as often as possible. Which when you go above 40, those likelihoods become to start to go lower, especially when you like play like a big regional with 9 rounds or a YCS with like 12 plus rounds with Top Cut and everything. It starts to come up.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I
I'd probably
definitely agree.
I'd probably like cut the Thizvern and the Quickly spell and get it down to 40, and that would look a lot better to me.
Yeah, that's totally fair. Let's look at his extra deck here. So there's one interesting card right off the bat. He did choose to play Legacia. One funny thing you can do with Legacia in this deck is since Legacia is a 12, you can take any 2 Crystron monsters plus the Tristaros and go into it, even when you're machine locked, because it's a machine. It basically helps you effectively break boards a little bit better, but also like cycle your engine a little bit more because you obviously get a draw out of it. Besides that, the extra deck is pretty standard. He didn't choose to play the Nash Knight package in here. The Nash Knight package is something that I really like about this deck because it enables Chaotic Elements to be a board breaker as well as a starter or like a search extender in your deck. But besides that, like it's pretty standard extra deck. Is there anything different that you see here, Julian, that you do maybe differently?
No, it's mostly the Nash Knight. I do think that like you should definitely play Nash Knight because you play with two aquas and then opening chaotic elements plus Azuna becomes like insane combo when going second. Just because you can loop through pretty much three aquas, right? With the Nash Knight being aqua itself, and then just break your opponent's board much easier.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. He is choosing to play Vinmana. I will say I've tested this card a lot because I really like this card. I think it's really cool. The thing is that I think this card is almost like never the right choice to go into. And I'll be totally honest. I think in like 70% of the game plays, like, or the game states that I've seen where people play Kanan Crystron and they're going into this, they're cheating on accident. This guy's a light. He is a light Xyz monster. You cannot use your Jokul summon to make this guy. You cannot use your Lantern summon to make this guy. A lot of the time it's being illegally summoned. And so it's just not as good as people really think it is. And I think that's something to pay attention to, especially if you're playing against this deck, as to like some of the plays that are commonly being done that they just cannot make at all. Let's look at the side deck here. In the side deck, he is choosing to play the second copy of Nib. He's also choosing to play 3 Drolls, 3 Lancias, 2 Phantasmes in here. I think this is kind of just to help him like cycle his deck into Floodgates. Clearly, Floodgates are like one of the biggest part about this format. Like 3 Fuwalos, 2 Perlias in his main deck, siding the Drolls, siding Lancias. He's playing Phantasma to try to get into these Floodgates. The interesting thing is that he's choosing to play the Thrust package here with a Dark Ruler in his side deck. This is something that I am not a huge fan of. I think that if you're going to side deck Thrust with Dark Ruler and the purpose of the Thrust is to search Dark Ruler, you should just play 3 Dark Rulers because you're playing into boards that have negates a lot of the time. Like simply you're playing into boards that have negates. And if you are having to play into something first off, like you're losing interaction right off the bat because they're probably going to use one of their monster negates that you could have Dark Ruler to begin with. Before you can Thrust search into Dark Ruler. There's also the chance they just like Ash your Thrust, which they can't Ash Dark Ruler. Or they could use their field presence to negate the Thrust, knowing that you're probably going to grab a card that's going to force negate anyways. I think it's just something that you should just play 3 Dark Rulers, especially if you're not playing any other like Thrust targets in your side deck. Like, yes, you can definitely Thrust into some engine cards. Being able to Thrust into Chaotic Elements to get a starter for your Canines, or being able to Thrust into Foolish to get a starter for your Crystons is super cool. But at the same time, I think that you should probably just focus your spots more on doing what they're supposed to be doing in your deck instead of being fake synergy to try to connect your engines. And then he is choosing
Yeah, I
to play
also
the...
don't love,
Mhm.
oh, so I was probably gonna say what you're about to say. I don't love like the thrust targets he's playing. Also in terms of like he's really just playing D barrier, which that card's not even that good. Um, I'd rather at that point play Black Goat because you can hit everything with it, and it's better into Yummy than D Barrier actually is because then it prevents them from playing on your turn as well because they won't ever have access to Statue. So I really feel like the Thrust package is lackluster and not being used very well. So like either don't play Thrust at all, or play it with like a lot more targets, more utility than here having just like the one card for going first and the one card for going second.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Looking at like the other 2 cards that we haven't talked about yet, he's playing Clockwork Knight and Rivalry. This is something that I really like in the deck. Being able to use your Clockwork Knight Link monster to search for Clockwork Knight is pretty good into like a lot of matchups. Being able to activate that card going first into Malice is really broken. Being able to activate that card into Yummy is really broken. They can never make their Snatch. It's a big kind of detriment to their game plan, you know. But also, like, if you draw your Rivalry and you are able to search Clockwork Knight, it's an FTK against every deck. Like, the game is just over. There's nothing more that you can do to continue playing the game state. I will say, I think it's a little bit weird with his siding patterns that we are not having that many like super strong go first cards in here. He's probably bringing in like the Thrust and maybe even the Nib to help him like eliminate all of the chummies that are in his main deck for when he goes post side for going first. I think there's just like a better way to utilize those. One card that you can play in this deck side deck is Regulus. I think Regulus is a card that's super slept on because it kind of does the same thing the board does anyways. It's just more negates that go on your field, more cards that get Dark Ruler. But Regulus randomly has some extender potential in your deck. It also helps eliminate redundancy in your hand. Like if you open a hand that has access to Canine and it has access to the Crystron cards, you're never using your second Xyz monster to go and add Scrap Recycler. You might as well just add a broken card like Regulus to your tool house, which is also going to help you play around like double hand trap things. So you'll never get like nibbed, chained 5 mana on while you're playing Regulus in your deck. Besides that, I think that he has a little bit of a weak matchup into Yummy, just looking at everything here. I think that his Yummy matchup is definitely like Yummy's one of the hardest matchups for this deck to begin with because it doesn't play into the Canine cards. So your like 15 non-engine that you're playing in your deck is automatically dropped down to like 12. And unless we draw drop it, it feels like we're just never breaking the board. We're also playing like Perulia in our deck, which is horrible into Yummy to begin with. If they start with Obedient School, they give you 0 draws. If they start with Cupsy, they give you 1 draw. If they start with Lollipo, it's 1 draw, and Cookie, it's 1 draw because they're all the same card. So I think it's a little bit weird to like focus your deck so much on like a certain matchup. Like, it clearly looks like he's just trying to counter the like Malice matchup as well as like the Canine Vanquisher matchup instead of focusing on the Yummy matchup at all. So I think that's the one things I would change in this side deck so far. Is there anything else that you'd want to change here or cards that you see missing that we should add in, Julian?
I mean, yeah, I'd probably just replace the Phantasm with like a Meows because at least like I don't like that card against K9 Vanquisher because it's not too good into that matchup. Anyways, like they make rock, and if your Phantasm ever gets ashed, it's like you're never gonna be able to summon it again. And then it's stronger than the Phantasm into like Malice, and other decks like Yummy as well.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I did want to mention really fast, this is not meant to be like a deck doctor video where we just like absolutely say this guy's deck is horrible. Like, he's clearly a great player. He was able to top a regional with his deck. And so obviously the deck has proven. I'm just giving my like 2 cents on what things that I would adjust in this deck and what I think could make this deck better here. As well as we're going over the deck in general, just to give our opinions on the deck and how we really feel about this deck in the format. Let's go
Yeah,
over.
and how the synergy work, right? Because at the end of the day, we're gonna rate if this is goo or glue. So we want to know, how a good list could be goo or
Glue. Moving on, the cards that are like really good and like interesting to look at versus this deck. Starting off with Lancia. How do you feel about Lancia into this deck, Julian?
I think it's okay. So the thing about this is that it's obviously like a 2 engine piece deck. So like if you Lancia and they just full K9 combo you, and it's still kind of rough, right? And you can still get to some parts of the Crystron engine. Like for example, if you open um like you can get a Tristaros to your hand, right? And then full K9 combo and then like have the Tristaros next to it. And then you got Lancer, you're like, oh no. Also, like if you like you have to drop Lancia early because if you hold it to what they have Ripper, then they can negate Lancia, right? If they're like, I'm just gonna make like a negate for Nib next, right? Like if I have a Zuna in my hand now, I can make the light guy that negates monster effects, right? To play around Nib better. So like Lancia has to be paired, and like even then, it's still not great. So I think it's okay. If you have nothing better to bring in, and it's in your side deck already because you're a smart guy and you respect Malice, then I would bring it in. But if you have better options, then I wouldn't force it in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that Lancia is good versus this deck. And you should be bringing it in almost every time just because it has the potential to be very, very good versus them. But Julie made a good point. You're able to access your full Canine combo still, as well as get to like a little bit of the Crystron engine. A lot of the time, what you end up doing is you end up like getting to synchro summon still. So you use your Sulfador to send your trap, and then you synchro summon into Eliskelis to add back your trap. And then you win with like a full Canine combo. So you'll have like Ripper plus maybe I don't know, like a Nash Knight, a Valon, Vinmana, whatever like Xyz monsters you play. And then you'll also have the trap card, which is really good. In this build, we'd also end with like the Canine Quick Play spell because they Lancia you. And so like you get to just so much that it doesn't really feel fair. I like into like supposedly the floodgate that's good against your deck, you're getting to so much. Then we have Droll. How do you feel about Droll with this deck, Julian?
Neutral decent because like a lot of these cards add. The only thing is that if you have the right Crystron cards, Drill's actually really bad. It's kind of a gamble card in my opinion against this deck. It's like it definitely obliterates the right hands, but the wrong hands it doesn't obviously do nothing because you're still stopping them from adding cards, which at the end of the day is pretty strong. But you're still able to like put a half board through it. So it's like I'd say it's 50-50. I would put it lower than Lancia. Like again, if you have nothing better to bring in, bring it in. But if you have better cards, I definitely like would not side in draw. I'd rather like pair my non-engine to actually affect the board and like trade resources than just like lazily throwing out a draw and hoping that like it stops their bad hands.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we going on, we have Parelia. I think Parelia is really, really good versus this deck. Whereas Parelia is not that good into the rest of the format. It's really good into the Canine decks because starting off with Jokel Reveal a Monster, if you already have Parelia in play, it feels like it's really bad because they're summoning 2 monsters at once. But then to extend and keep play, I mean, it's a normal summon that it usually takes. It's a Lantern from hand. They're probably going to try to Azuna you. Like, you're really just going to get like 4 draws off this Parelia. And yes, I understand the risk of Paradise Smasher comes into play there. But by that point, you've had multiple draws. And if you can draw into anything like an Ash Blossom, you can Ash Blossom their Azuna by chance, maybe stop them from searching that way. An Imperm, you can Imperm their Ripper to make sure they don't have everybody to connect. Even a Nib, like if you can get to Nib, like there's a good chance you can pair that with another card to try to just like out the whole field and stop the Paradise Smash from really even being a threat. The other thing is like if you're able to resolve the Parelia and they start playing and then you have like a really good interaction to stop them, like it feels like they're in such a weird spot because they have to choose to give you more draws just to try to equal like a fair game state with them. Like specifically Parulia plus Azuna. If they go Jokul, summon 2 guys, and you go Azuna special, make a Valon, use Valon, book a moon, their Jokul. Like it just feels like you're in such a terrible spot because you have to give them like probably 3 more draws just so you can like start playing the game, and they're just like filling up their hand size, and they already have board presence to start their turn with. So I think that Parulia is just overall really, really good into this deck, which leads us into the next card that's also really broken in this deck. This is Dimensional Shifter. Now, I don't know what possible deck in this format could play Shifter. Can you think of any decks, Julien, that maybe
I don't know, but I'm gonna go read
um
Alice in Wonderland real quick. I'll be right back.
okay, sounds good. You have fun reading, nerd. Shifter. Obviously, you can play Shifter and Malice. Shifter destroys this deck. If you get Shiftered, they are playing.
You can play Shifter, so
Yeah, that's
hopefully
true.
good.
But you play against basically pure Canine with no Lantern at that point. The other thing is it also turns off Azuna as being like a super extender, because usually Azuna has 2 bodies, but if you Shifter them, I mean, they're not really going to use the effect and send Lupus, send him to wherever he's going. They're usually just going to use the Azuna to be 1 body. And so I think that Shifter is just like one of the like best hand traps that you can play into this deck. And then the next card I'll let you talk about, Julien.
Oh, Mega Fleet. Okay, this guy, like this card is Loki, hella goo. If you have space in your extra deck, like if you're playing Dragon Tales, for example, and your extra deck like has some free slots, if you're playing like Canine Vanquish and you're like, oh, I don't want to play Typhon, I want to play this card instead. This card like checks his deck super hard because the normal end board is like SP and then Infinity and then other guys next to it, right? This literally lets you go, I'm gonna super poly your monsters, but without having to use super poly or discard a card. I'm just gonna take them, put him in your graveyard, summon my own guy with like 2400 attack. So like yeah, it's very good. You get to fuse like it's a Cyber Dragon monster, so Infinity, plus a monster in the EMZ, so SP for example. And out like 2 of their strong interruptions. And like the way for if people are scared of this card, they'll just make a weaker board, right? They'll put like Infinity EMZ and then they won't make SP, right? So it's like if people want to play around this, they can, but it also means sacrificing their board for a card that like nobody plays. So like again, if you have space in the extra deck, I'd play this. It's actually really good against this deck, but it also depends like, are you scared of this deck? Do you think this deck is like meta relevant? And if you think it is, Loki, play this card.
Yeah, it just has so much damage to the board, and I don't think anyone's at the point of their development with the deck that they are worried about really playing around this card. They're just doing their combo like they've seen on YouTube. Next up, we have kind of like a paired package here. We have Ultimate Slayer and Valon. Ultimate Slayer is really, really good versus this deck. And I think it's a card that we'll kind of see resurface into the format a little bit because he has good coverage into anything. Being able to use the Ultimate Slayer, sending a Valon to bounce their Infinity, like trades very positively because it automatically outs like 1 Omni Negate. And it makes it unusable for them because their Nova is going to the graveyard still. So it's not like a resource that they get back to like use again. And then sitting the Valon gives you 2 options. If they do the correct thing, which is they chain the Crystron trap just to put it face up on the field, so you can't pop with the Valon because they're obviously going to see what you're sending because it's sense for cost, you know. And they're going to chain that there. Then you can still use the Valon to kind of force out the Canine Quick Play spell if they have that, or if there's any other non-engine they set, you can also use it to force it there. But you should know realistically where the Canine like Quick Play spell is. And then like you're able to force that there. If they do decide to chain the Canine Quick Play spell, they're basically surrendering a pop and the Ripper negate just to like have the look at your hand effect. So it's trades super, super well into that game state, and it's not like it gives them more resources like it does in some decks. The other option that you can do with this is you can technically play Aggregator. Aggregator lets you deal with like a monster threat, which is more reliable. Like they're never going to end with just an Xyz monster in any deck in this format. And so you can play Aggregator, but playing the Valon gives you a better like spread into everything. Like because it makes this card also very good versus K9 Vanquish Soul. Is there anything else that I should touch about with this card right now?
I mean, Ultimate Slayer is also good into Yummy, for example. So if, like it hits a lot of decks very well. And if you have again space in your side deck, space in your extra deck for the extra deck targets, it's really good.
Mm-hmm. And then going on, we have two cards that are pretty much the same. We have Dark Ruler and Droplet. I'm not going to touch much on these cards. This is a very front-end heavy deck. It's a front-loaded deck. Almost all of your disruptions are like in the monster zone, and so having a card that says your monster zone doesn't do anything is pretty cool. Let's look at the next card though, Eclipse. How do you feel about Eclipse, Julian?
I really like Eclipse against this deck specifically because, like you said, it's front loaded, but also like layering of the board comes from the quickly spell, and Eclipse deals with the quickly spell like Dark Ruler doesn't, right? Because it flips the monster face down, so now like they just can't upgrade it, right? The game doesn't know that it's the K9 XYZ monster. So that's really good. It obviously has its weaknesses, such as being ashable, also, the fact that if you don't fully break the board, your opponent just gets to draw 5 at the end of the turn. But at that point, if you get to that, you probably are lost anyway, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, the fact that it's ashable, respondable to, like, the thing is, they'll just negate this, right?
Mhm.
That's the issue with it. Like, they'll just negate it with Infinity, so it'll trade 1 for 1, whereas Dark Ruler will just like trade with the whole board.
Mhm. I will say if you can pair any card with this Eclipse, like whether it's like an Imperm, a Chalice, I don't know, something that like points at their Cyber Dragon, or even if you go like Mega Fleet activate Eclipse, some way to like force out the Infinity. Eclipse is obviously a better card. It's shutting down the like the additional pop that they get off of the cluster as well because their Ella Skeletus is now face down, so they don't have a Crystron synchro. So it's taking away that. It's turning off the quick play spell. It basically takes their whole field, shuts it down, and makes it just Izuna in hand plus the one pop off of the trap. And you're doing that with just one card if you play the Mega Fleet. And so it's really, really good into the board, honestly, or anything that you can pair with if they don't play into the Mega Fleet or you decide that you don't have the room for it. Then we have a couple of the cards in the side deck that are like the extra spots here that are pretty much the same. We have Lightning Storm and Harpies. I think these cards are like okay into the deck. The only thing that you have to worry yourself with is they are going to have an Omni Negate, right? Even though like using this card is pretty effective into the deck, they could also just choose to chain the quick play spell and then summon their werewolf there. It means that you basically just used a like Harpies or Lightning Storm to trade with the pop off of Cluster, which is obviously good, but I mean, it's not the best thing ever. And you're trading with like the pop off of the quick play spell and Ripper. Like they still have like the super front loaded board to where it feels like it's almost unbreakable. And obviously it's good into that situation, and you're not pairing it with something like Dark Ruler. Because if you had Dark Ruler, you'd have gone Dark Ruler first, Harpies second. So if you lead with Harpies, they know you don't have Dark Ruler, so they can kind of play into like the front loaded board that they have going on. I will say that, like I just said, if you do have them paired, like Dark Ruler plus Harpies, that's Julian's special combo. That breaks any board, right? That is
That's
absolutely
really good,
unfair.
yeah. No more spells and traps, no more monsters. GG.
Exactly. And then Julian, I'll let you talk about this card.
Gravekeepers. I think Gravekeepers is a really cool choice against this deck, but only really for going first. So you use this card, you call the, what is it, second effect? Oh, sorry, the first effect. Neither players can activate card effects in the graveyard. And the entire the entire Crystron engine like relies on that. It's kind of like lancing them, but like going first, and they can't respond, they can't call by, they can't do anything about it. And if it doesn't hurt your deck at all, then this is like a really good card against this deck. Yeah, so I think that if you can play this card, and like it does interact well with Malice as well. Neither player can banish cards from the graveyard. Like if you're playing a Feedsmith deck against Malice, like this card's broken. You're just like, no touching my graveyard, thank you. Yeah, so I think this card's pretty strong, especially if like the effects don't affect your deck, then you can fit this in to play against everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I did want to talk about this is it also gives you a little bit of insulation in your deck. If you use this Verts effect and you said neither player can activate card effects in the graveyard, you're free to do your full combo. And then if they have an Azuna in their hand, they're kind of just have to sit there not using it because Azuna sends a card that activates in the graveyard. So unless their goal is just to summon Azuna so they can look at him because it's Azuna, then it doesn't really do anything. Moving on, we have two trap cards here that are both really good thrust targets for it. We have Mutually Averred Destruction. I'll go ahead and pull this card up as well, just so that we can see it here. Mutually Averred Destruction is kind of like a goo card of the format. This is used to counter any K9 deck, specifically Vanquish Soul K9. It's really, really good against, but it's obviously strong still into the Crystron version of this. It says both players must keep their hands revealed this turn, while their hands are revealed by this effect. If they both have a card in their something, that part doesn't matter. All you need is the first effect, and it says both players must keep their hand revealed this turn. The reason this is good is because if their hand is revealed, the card is revealed, they can't reveal it again, right? If they try to turn the card around, it would look back at them, and that's not how cost works. You can't like do a card effect twice. They can't activate Jokel to reveal itself. It's already being revealed, is basically all I'm saying. And so it's really good into this, not just because it turns off their Jokel, but it also is going to give you complete hand knowledge. Having just like a total information overload of everything that they can do just makes it a very, very simplified game state. So if you can play this card or you're already playing Thrust in your deck, it's a really good idea to put this card in. And the last card here is something I'll let Julien talk about.
Yeah, so DDG, this card just says monsters don't go to the grave this turn, they're banished. And we already said that Shifter was good against this deck. Not really for the spell trap part, that part doesn't matter as much. Like mostly the monsters, obviously, banishing everything is great. But yeah, this goes in hand with Gravekeepers, Shifter, Lancia. Like this deck just likes to have cards in the graveyard and use their effects. So if you can prevent that, then that's great. It also is good against the K9 engine. It's decent, right? Because it just cuts him off of Lantern, which is, a whole XYZ. And it cuts him off of Izuna, which is another whole XYZ. So you're cutting him off of like 2 of their possible XYZs, plus the entire Crystron engine. So all they're left with like Jokul. That's it. They have Jokul.
Yeah.
Any destruction, they're good.
Yeah, I will say that Different Dimension Ground is a little bit weird to this deck. It's not as good as Shifter is because this specifically said any monster since the graveyard is banished instead. So what you can specifically do in this deck is you can like use Jokul to get 2 bodies on the field. You can then overlay those into something like a Ripper or any monster that you'd want to like use the effect of. It's most likely going to be Ripper. You're going to use the effect you're going to detach because it's getting detached to the graveyard. It's not technically a monster, so it still will go to the graveyard. So you can use Ripper to search for like a Lantern. You can use your Ripper to then attack them, make that into a Zeus, clear the whole field, and then because your Lantern was sent to the graveyard as material, you can then special your Lantern, summon something back, Lantern get to Case get to Izuna, and then get to like a Nash Knight or any sort of like other Xyz monster like a Valon that you may want to make. So they can still have like some sort of plays under this, whereas Shifter is obviously just like way better. But I mean, that's assuming that you had 0 disruptions. If you can somehow like blow on their like Jokul and like get him to go away, you can like flick him off the field, something. It's really, really strong versus that deck. All right, that's about all the things that we can say about this K9 Crystron deck. I think this deck is very, very strong. I think it plays through basically any hand trap in the game. Once again, I've said this a bunch of different times, but if you open Jokul plus Ulfador, that plays for like 3 things, probably 5, maybe 20 things in their hand. It just plays through infinite hand traps is all I'm trying to get at. And so I think this deck has the potential to be like one of the strongest decks of the format. It really depends on the pilot because the deck has so many lines when it does get interacted with. It really just depends on if you know your Crystron interactions and how you're able to really get back onto them after you get disrupted while also not locking yourself. That's like the main thing for this deck. If I had to give this deck a rating, Julien gave the last deck an 8.5. It was the K9 Draco Tail deck. He gave it an 8.5. Sorry to spoil the video. You guys can go watch it if you want. I'm going to give this an 8.6 because I think this deck is a little bit better than that build of the deck. Once again, that build was playing like Jokuls and things in it. If you're going to play a deck that plays the K9 Jokuls in it, I think that this is the best build of it. And so I'm going to give it an 8.6 and say this deck is the goo. What about you, Julien?
You know what? Before, I think we've disagreed a little bit. I think with this one, I'm going to agree. I think I'm going to give it a 8.55 just because I know you like this deck a little bit better than me. But I do think it's really, really, really strong. It's definitely better than the Dracotel version that we showed on my channel. I think that that's actually not the best build of Dracotel, but I'm getting ahead of myself, and that's not the topic of this video. But yeah, I'm gonna give this one the goo stamp. So yeah.
All right, guys. Well, hey, that's going to be it for the video. If you guys wouldn't mind commenting, and subscribing, I'd really appreciate it. If you want to learn how to play this deck more, in the link in the description, there's actually a link to a spreadsheet that I did with Yassine that shows all of the combos for this deck, all of like the theories for the deck, multiple deck lists, all the different deck variations. So go check that out there. Make sure you check out Julien's channel in the description. And besides that, guys, I hope you have an absolutely fantastic day. Thanks. Bye-bye.